Hello, my name is Dee. As Danielle said, I run Zenfry and I make video games. I work mostly in AR and VR stuff, but before that, I made films. I was a film geek. I went to film school. I had to learn how to use booms and write scripts and learn about Battleship Potemkin and all of the annoying montage history that exists in the world. So I went to film school so you don't have to. I transitioned from all of this type of, what is it, film theory, and moved it into games and went, I have a lot of information of how films work. Maybe I can incorporate this into my games, and I do, and it does work. So Zenfry started as Zenfry Pictures early on in 2005, and then it stopped around 2009. We started getting actual game funding and making a good business out of it in 2010. So I started in film for a little bit. And today I'm going to be talking about scripts and writing, visuals, and structure and direction. I tried to break it out into the 3 core components that apply to films as well as to games. And you can see some of my early student film work here on the bubbles. So first, scripts and writing, all substance, no style. So one of the first rules of filmmaking is that you show, you don't tell. Exposition is super boring. No one wants to go like, okay, the bomb is going to go off. Why is the bomb going off? Okay, well, we're going to tell you exactly why. So you're going to sit there and listen to me for 5 minutes, explain everything you need to know why you should care. It's so boring. I've given some examples. What are metachlorians? Well, metachlorians are. No, we don't want to do that at all. It's all talky-talky between the pew-pew. So we want to wrap those story points into the actions and content. Red Dead Redemption does a really good job of this. They have a lot of story to give to the player. What do? They make them walk somewhere. If you have to, give story points that are quite long and laborious, give the player something to do, keep them moving, or at best, wrap them into the actual storyline that you're trying to convey. Tutorials as part of the game itself, Mario being one of the best examples, so much better than just telling the player what they should be doing. So a really good example of this is Jurassic Park. If you remember, in Jurassic Park, they have that ride that everyone goes on, and they say, wow, how are the dinosaurs made? And why should I care about these dinosaurs? Well, guess what? They made a ride for you to go on, and the viewers and the characters have to go through this ride together. So all this who, what, why, when, why is the guy talking to himself? Like, why did they do all of this exposition? Well, we're going to wrap it into a story here. Oh, did I leave? Am I still talking?
No,
okay,
you're still here.
I'm on rural internet, so sometimes things will just go. And then I'll be talking to myself. So you learn the information feeling like you got the exposition, but it wasn't delivered to you in a presentation-like format. Another rule is protagonist versus the antagonist. So protagonist would be the main character. Usually they're the good guy, the antagonist, the one who's always trying to harm the good guy, the villain usually. And it's the balance of power between the two that really makes the story work. So what works in really good films is that the good guy gets like a little dash of evil and the bad guy gets a little dash of good. And I've given 2 bad guys that give like really good reasons as to why they're doing the thing they're doing, right? You want that villain to feel like they're not just, I'm going to take over the world and ha ha ha, there's nothing you can do about it. And it's like, well, why? What kind of reason is that? So always adding in a little bit of bad to the good and good to the bad balances the power, because you always want to make sure that everything is always on like a light, even playing field for that push and pull of the act structure. So act structure is very, very common vast majority of your films and your TV shows will go through this particular structure, though there are many others that some people experiment with, and you can figure out which one they're doing within about the first 10 minutes of the show or the movie. You can figure out what kind of act structure they're working with. But first you want the background, and then the inciting incident, the why are we in this? What happened to the protagonist that makes the story go on its way? And then you want the push and pull, that back and forth between who the villain is and who the protagonist is, and back and forth until you start getting up all the way to the climax. And then what's missing from this is the resolution at the end. You want it to all wrap up into a nice little bow, or not. You maybe want the spinning top at the end, right? Next on to visuals. See, I'm going to be fast about this. Pretty colors. The rule of thirds, a little harder in filmmaking. I gotta admit that. Rule of thirds is impossible sometimes because the camera is usually the player, right? They want to move around. You're going to wreck the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds is about composing it where most of the line of action happens on those actual grid lines. So when you're making especially pretty screenshots, or you're trying to set up some type of opening shot in your game, you want to make it pretty, right? So you got to follow the rule of thirds. It's proven to be extra pretty for everyone who's watching it. And if you can't do that, then the golden ratio also works for you. And there are many Wikipedia articles related to these two very boring notes, but I would just say that following the lines, the little grid, makes things much better. Does this screen follow the rule of thirds? Oh goodness, it does not, but this one does. So you can see I've added a couple extra little lines there to kind of show you how it lines up, and it makes for a much better screen photo at the end. Foreground, midground, and background. Some people forget this. They forget that they should be putting things in the front, and then in the middle, and then in the background. We want to have a very nice all the way through photo rather than just something very flat. 2D games can have this. This is an example from a game we just finished for CBC Kids. There's a foreground, a midground, and a background. Characters are in the midground, and there's little animals that show up either in the foreground or the background that you can kind of take photos of as you're going. So you're constantly looking as a player between all of them, and that engages the player a whole lot more than just one plane. And parallaxing is always a bonus too. If you can make things kind of move differently, that's some of the best techniques that Snow White started with, right? That they had the background move at different, and that was much harder because they were doing it old school analog compared to digital now, where we can just make things go at a different rate. Parallax, always a bonus. Structure and direction. Why are we making this again? Well, edits. I could have made this talk a whole lot longer. I took out 4 points that I didn't need. You guys don't need to learn about antagonists. You don't need to learn about 7 basic plots, how to cut on action, or the 30-degree rule. I just got rid of it. You don't need to learn. That's for a different talk and a different day. So you can always pull out too much from your story and you can put it back in later. I'm always telling people to pull out as much as they possibly can, because it's probably bogged down. They're probably thinking too much about the granular details and not about the big macro story. So you want to be asking yourself, why? Why is this happening? Bring it back to that minimum viable product that a lot of people talk about. What's the minimum viable product? Well, that's the why question. Why anything? Why? Why is this happening? Why do I need to go there? Why do I need this relic? Why did I win? Why did I die? Why am I the main character? Why are they the main character? Why am I playing? And did I even make this game? All very good questions to be asking yourself throughout the development, because the viewer is going to be asking the exact same questions as well. Why am I playing this game? Well, you're playing this game because, and then think of a very good reason as to why, and then add that to the actual story, to your structure, to your direction, to everything in the game. Here's a little hint from film school. Good audio, bad visuals, you can get a pretty good grade. So back when I was in film school, we used really bad camcorders and we used little Zoom recorders. And if we had good audio, it would make up for the visuals. Sometimes this doesn't work so well with games because if you're taking screenshots and trying to show off screenshots and a bad screenshot shows up, then people aren't going to want to play your game. And that's where the artistic render works so well. When I was little and I went to go get like a copy of Conan the Barbarian. It had a really lovely box art and you're like, I want to play that game. And then you brought it home and it was like a little guy, a little character. And you're like, well, that's not Conan. So artistic render, if you can't make all of the art work, but good sound. Anyone who's working in sound, this is a bonus for you because good sound always makes it. People will never forgive a really bad sound bite that's just constantly hurting their ears. They'll forgive some art. It's, you know, an artistic choice, but it's never an artistic choice if you can hear sound being not quite perfect. So plan your shot, something that is very common and important in filmmaking is to plan everything out, because if you don't plan well and then you go and shoot on the day, you've forgotten things, you can't fix it in post. Sometimes they try to fix things in post now. If your actor suddenly has a mustache and they have to render it off, it costs a lot of money. That's why you need to plan out your shots. So if you can't make sense of it before, it's going to be impossible to find it during your process. So that means bubbles and outlines, that means shot lists, sketches, level descriptions, even a log line or an elevator pitch. A log line would be one sentence saying, my game is this, said in much nicer fashion. Elevator pitch is very similar. I got in the elevator with, you know, a very important executive. How do I pitch my game before the elevator doors open, right? And a plan can always change. So you can always be editing, rehashing out that plan, but the final game, very hard to change. So you finished your game now. What are you going to do? Well, what the filmmakers do is they make a very flashy, very nice trailer, and you can too, because it's a digital age, right? We have lots of social media. We have to promote our own games, a lot of self-marketing. So you kind of have to make everything yourself. And I end up making all of my own videos, which turns out well for me because I took filmmaking, so I'm able to edit now my own work into a filmy format. But there are lots of rules that you can use as well to make interesting and engaging promo trailers. So editing to music and sound, very easy to do. TikTok is one of the greater examples of this, as well as cutting to the beat or cutting on movement and action. Again, a lot of cuts on TikTok. You're moving and then you're cutting right on the action. Great examples there. Keeping it short. There's a lot of long trailers. Editing your trailer will be best benefit to you. Keeping it very short, 10 to 30 seconds, minimal text. Keep text at the end. Don't do that long. Here's my logo for a while. Just get rid of it. Go straight to really high action stuff for the first 3 seconds. Get in and get out within 30 seconds. Show your logo at the end. It's going to get you a lot more traction and a lot more interest and a lot more shares. If you can just keep it as high paced to the beat as you can. And then my bonus point, feed your crew. So when I was doing student films, we would always have to feed everyone because they're working for free, right? You're not going to say, well, you get, you know, your $50,000 a year salary on my student budget. That doesn't work. So you had to feed people in different ways. So if you can't feed them physically with a food and craft service table because they're there working with you, always being nice and giving praise, and especially giving everyone a seat at the table. So even if you are at the top of what you think is your project, because you're leading it from a design point of view, it's always very important to make sure that everyone gets a voice, everyone gets heard, and you're taking that information in, and that still feeds your team. And that's it. So thank you for listening to me ramble for I don't know, 15 minutes, and I will pass it off to my other presenter.